I see a lot of businesses when it comes from a growth point of view, they're not maximizing the value of their business in order to get the best price when they exit. And like you said, it's probably a once in a lifetime.
All right. Joining me here today on Exit Like a Billionaire is a values-driven growth advisor, impact investor, and business mentor. She's named as one of Forbes' top 11 most impactful leaders, and with an 8-figure track record and a gift for scaling purpose-led businesses, she empowers entrepreneurs to build net positive models, deepen their why, and turn strategic growth into ripple effect impact. Let's all welcome Tamara Loehr.
Hi, Jeff. Great to be here. As always, I love our conversations and look forward to diving into the strategies that billionaires use in order to maximize not only their value at exit, but also their philanthropic endeavors.
Thank you so much for being here. And I know you've coached CEOs that do $10 billion a year in revenue, so look forward to sharing some of the insights between us.
Sounds great. Let's get stuck in.
Great. Well, with that, obviously you've led many businesses. You've helped coach CEOs that do as much as $10 billion a year in revenue as part of your overall planning with them to help them grow and scale. And you've built a remarkable legacy in these impact-led, entrepreneurship ventures where you've combined profit with purpose. Can you share a bit about how that came to being and also a bit about how our paths crossed as well?
Yeah, certainly. Look, I think we both connected and became instant friends based on the fact that we believe that profit and purpose should coexist, and they can coexist, whereas most people look at these two things as an either or an or. So when we first met and started having a conversation, firstly about, growing your enterprise value, but also how to maximize that from a purpose point of view, I focus on growing the businesses and growing the impact. And you really help make sure that, you're helping the CEO at a time of liquidity or a business exit, if they're planning to sell their business. You help them maximize their impact at that point as well and structure it so that they can be more philanthropic in their endeavors. So I think the two go really nicely hand in hand, growing and then maximizing that for both, yourself personally and for philanthropic endeavors. So to me, that's a beautiful conversation to be having today about how those two work. But for me, getting started it wasn't even on my radar to exit businesses. I have a marketing background. I was helping other people grow their businesses and maximize their enterprise value. And it was actually my forum. He said to me, look, you're maximizing it for everybody else. Why not do it for yourself? Which is when I decided to switch from building other people's businesses to building my own. And now I've done full circle and I'm doing it for other people again, as long as they're committed to both profit and purpose. Because as we drive that profit, we need to drive that purpose in parallel. So, but for you, Jeff, when you're meeting CEOs and founders, what are you finding is the impact that they're wanting to make? Because we're not talking about 501c here. We're talking about privately owned businesses that are focused on both profit and purpose.
Yeah, what we're finding there is that for many of them, they're realizing this liquidity event may be their one chance or they're one of several chances if they're serial entrepreneurs to say, how do we make our difference? So, they've had the ideas rattling around in their heads for a while to say, how do we have that differentiated impact? And as they're doing that, we really want to have that conversation with them even well in advance of the exit to start thinking, okay, if you're going to do this, what are some of the things that you can do that are tax smart and impact sensitive to say there may be a way to get a multiplied impact off of this. And as we do that, that's where we really want to understand their heart, what it is that matters to them. And then also we take a look at how that's going to be played out through the liquidity event. Are there ways that we can pre-position that in advance or during or post-exit? Because there can be very different answers as far as should you give the day before, the day after you have that exit. But we really want to align that vision and that brand, especially because even pre-exit, there can be some natural benefits even for the business in that particular case to be able to say, this is part of who we are. This is part of our DNA. 61% of fans of a brand want to see what do they care about? What do they stand for? How are they going to make their difference in their impact? And that's a significant amount of what we focus on is saying, how do those align? And then also, how does that reflect the legacy you want to leave to the family, great employees, great followers of your business and say, here's how we make our difference.
I love that. They need to come to us a little bit early and start doing this planning. I see a lot of businesses when it comes from a growth point of view, they're not maximizing the value of their business in order to get the best price when they exit. And like you said, it's probably a once in a lifetime. So let's not leave money on the table. So for me, planning, okay, how do we hit a home run on all three that maximize value, which is healthy EBITDA and profit, which is what most CEOs and founders get right. But they're missing the critical other two ones, which is a predictable, repeatable, scalable revenue model. That one gets you extra multiples at exit. And of course, the rate of growth. Are you outgrowing your competitors at a really healthy, fun growth rate? Most people I see are maybe getting 1 or 2 out of those right, but certainly not 3 out of 3. And that leaves a lot of money on the table, which I'd rather see that in their pocket. So coming to me earlier from a growth point of view is really important. Talk us through then why that's important to plan out well in advance and what sort of timeline they need to be thinking about this if they are looking to have an exit.
Absolutely. So some of the things we see there, and I think to your point, we want them to connect with someone like you to help them scale that business and start to think even 3 to 5 years in advance, how are they going to do that? Because a lot of businesses, when they're being acquired, they're going to be looking at the last 3 years and seeing what those revenue streams look like. And then as part of that also, when we're looking at that, we want to see, okay, what can be pre-positioned in advance there? And so with that, some of those decisions you have to make before there may be an announced sale. Otherwise, the IRS may look at those differently.
They need to plan not only ahead of time for how to maximize their value from a growth point of view, but they also need the structures to be set up well in advance as well, right? There's no use giving Jeff a call the day before once you've got a buyer. Talk us through sort of that process and how long they should be planning and getting ready in preparation for an exit.
Yeah, typically we'd like to encourage them to start having that conversation 3 to 5 years in advance. And with that, that gives time for, someone like yourself to be able to come in and help them think through where there are, cost overruns in the business or where there may be some cost compression that can be exercised, how they can make it more profitable, continue to scale the business, because each of those can command its own value, as well as also if they can show that differentiated positioning, now that can command a premium of an extra multiple or 2 in some cases on increased earnings. And so as a result of that, we want to have that conversation to say, how do we boost the earnings? How do we clean up the cap table if there's anything out there that needs some cleansing? And make sure that everything's clear as to who's entitled to what there. And then as part of that, again, some of those declarations really have to be made well in advance of an announced exit. If there's an announced acquisition or if there's a pending IPO, any number of things there can make a distinct difference in how that's going to be treated and how much that can be escaping taxation through either structuring through gifting to other family members. Is it something that goes into trust strategies? Is it something that can be repositioned as a more effective capital gains tax treatment instead of an ordinary income tax treatment or an asset sale? There's a lot of different things that go into that, and we'd rather have that decision made up front, well in advance, so that way it gives us maximum tax maneuverability. Because as we like to say, right, you want to pay the IRS what you owe, but there's absolutely no need to tip them. The service just isn't that good. So how do we make sure that we mitigate that? And then also with that gifting strategy in mind, that can also be something that can factor in as part of the charitable offset to say, how do we potentially defer or offset some taxable gains through charitable strategies? And again, it's very helpful to identify those in advance.